Welcome to the deep dive, where we take your source material, your critical articles, your research, your notes, and we just distill the absolute core of what you need to know fast. Today, we're diving into something really interesting, I think, the world of creative shifts. We've got an exclusive article here on the author, Sarah Nicole Lemon, and it details her forthcoming dark fantasy novel.
A big one.
A very big one. Our mission today is pretty focused. We really need to unpack this creative pivot she's making. I mean, Lemon is known for her work in young adult fiction.
Yeah,
Right?
that's her entire brand up to this point, yeah.
And now she's leaping into the adult dark fantasy landscape with a book called A Dark and Wild Wood.
Right.
But I think what's more important than just the genre shift is the engine behind it, the highly personal, almost therapeutic inspiration for the whole story. So we're going to give you the shortcut to understanding the emotional foundation of this release.
And, for anyone who tracks how stories work or how personal experiences get metabolized into fiction, this is just a perfect case study.
I think so, too.
What we're analyzing here is really the intentional choice of a genre to handle some serious complexity and trauma. You'll walk away understanding not just the book's plot, but the psychological stuff under the surface that makes it click with an adult audience.
Okay, let's get into it then. Let's unpack this and start with the basics. We're talking about Sarah Nicole Lemon, and this book, A Dark and Wild Wood, is her debut in adult dark fantasy.
Yeah, that's a huge move when you're an established author. Crossing that line between YA and adult, it's a big risk.
It really is. Just to set the timeline for you, the book is scheduled for spring 2026. The official on-sale date is May 12, 2026, and it's published by Harper Voyager.
And she's a North Carolina-based author, for context.
Right. So that's the metadata, but the really interesting conversation here is why the move was necessary at all. I mean, why abandon the whole readership you've already built in YA?
Well, that move is absolutely this story here. Lemon was, very clear about it. She says she realized almost immediately that her main character, Salome, had a story that just could not be contained within the YA framework.
So the material itself demanded a different audience.
Exactly. It demanded it.
I think a lot of people just assume that themes like struggle and identity, that they're universal. How does focusing on a mature audience actually change the creative stakes for a dark fantasy story like this?
Oh, it changes everything. It's because of this distinction Lemon herself identified. YA, traditionally it centers around that coming-of-age moment.
Right, that flashpoint of self-discovery.
Yeah, and it usually leads to some kind of defined resolution or victory by the end. It's often about figuring out who you're going to be.
Okay.
But Lemon's work, she realized, needed more room than that. Her own personal material showed her that coming into being, the true, messy process of evolution, of recovering from deep trauma.
It's a continuous process.
It's a lifelong, continuous process. It happens again and again, and it often involves some really painful steps back. That complexity, that sustained struggle, is what works so well in adult fiction, which doesn't need the neat and tidy ending that YA often demands.
So the shift isn't just about, adding more adult themes like sex or violence, which is kind of the simple assumption.
The easy assumption, yeah.
It's about honoring the difficult, nonlinear nature of real growth. That distinction, coming of age versus coming into being, that tells us we are in for a story that's about sustained emotional work, not just one triumphant moment.
Exactly. The narrative stakes feel higher because the damage is deeper, and the healing is, it's messier. It lets the author explore trauma and adult psychology in a way that doesn't always lead to a simple, happy ending, but maybe to a hard-won freedom.
Okay, so since the story needed this level of emotional maturity, what was the specific, intense experience that drove this whole pivot?
This is where the personal inspiration really comes in. Lemon revealed that the concept for A Dark and Wild Wood grew directly from her own need to process and metabolize a real-life experience with a toxic romance.
Oh, okay. That's the emotional core.
That is the core. And what's fascinating is that she gravitated to a very specific ancient myth to process this trauma. The chilling fairy tale of Bluebeard.
Bluebeard, of course.
She said she just couldn't stop thinking about the psychological structure of that story and how much it mirrored what she was going through.
Bluebeard is such a perfect, just horrific metaphor for a toxic romance, especially when you think about the dynamic of control.
Absolutely.
So what does that fairy tale structure give you when you're trying to process personal trauma?
Well, Bluebeard is fundamentally about the illusion of safety, which is, a huge part of a toxic or abusive relationship.
Yeah.
You enter this seemingly wonderful, powerful domain, the big castle, the rich husband, but it's all built on isolation and manipulation.
He gives you everything.
Everything, except for access to one tiny forbidden space. The locked room.
The locked room.
And that locked room is the truth, the hidden horror. In a toxic romance, this is often the one thing you're not allowed to talk about, or the realization about the other person's true nature that you are, forbidden from seeing.
So Lemon is using that structure to analyze gaslighting control.
And the self-betrayal it takes to stay in that quote-unquote magnificent house.
Wow. That brings such an intense psychological weight to the writing. Lemon's intention was, and this is a direct quote, to free my own mind from that haunted, enchanted home, to face the bloody chamber and move beyond it.
I mean, that is a writer using mythology as a personal exorcism.
Absolutely.
It is a profoundly personal act.
Yeah.
And she made it clear this book is written specifically for the reader who's experienced that kind of manipulative romance and who craves a story where the main character emerges with power, dignity, and justice.
So if the Bluebeard story traditionally ends with the woman, facing the horror and sometimes getting rescued or just running away,
Right.
Lemon is focusing on the internal power, the dignity and justice. It sounds like this novel is less about the trauma itself and more about the path out of it.
Exactly. She specifically says this is not a cautionary tale. It is a celebration of survival. That thematic promise really dictates the direction of the entire story. It means the narrative isn't about dwelling on the victimization, but on charting that difficult internal journey to reclaim your own sovereignty.
A map for survivors.
That's a great way to put it.
That focus on survival makes the setup of the protagonist, Salome, even more important. I mean, she can't just be a blank slate. She has to start from a place of vulnerability to make her survival feel earned. Let's dive into her background.
Let's do it.
So we meet Salome, who has been burdened since she was a child by visions of spirits and dangerous powers she can't control. So she already feels inherently unstable. Her own power is a liability.
Yeah, not an asset. And that this feeling of being dangerous is immediately made worse by this external tragedy. She watches her foster mother burn as a witch.
Horrifying.
A horrifying, traumatic event that confirms society's fear of power, especially female power. It basically tells Salome that her own abilities are something to be suppressed.
And after that, she and her sister Rochelle are put in a convent, a restrictive place described as a grim and dreary existence. That confinement is the perfect psychological prison. It's designed to squash anything dangerous she might have inside her.
The convent is basically society telling her, you have to hide your true self to be safe. And then even that fragile safety is just shattered when Rochelle vanishes. So Salome is now driven by this loyalty to save her sister, which forces her out of that controlled world and into the chaos she's so afraid of.
And she takes desperate measures right away. She lands first in a brothel, then has a terrible accident, which finally drives her completely into the wilderness, the Black Forest.
That sequence, from convent to brothel to wilderness, it's just a rapid descent into absolute desperation. The brothel is a temporary, difficult means of survival, and the accident and then running into the forest pushes her to her absolute limit. She's emotionally and physically bankrupt, and it's at this exact moment of ultimate need that the dark god shows up.
Deep in the forest, she comes face to face with Lord Death himself. It's a huge, mythic confrontation, and one she's absolutely primed for, given her history of feeling so powerless.
And Lord Death's home, his domain, is the physical version of that mental illusion Lemon talked about. Salome follows him to his manor, which is full of locked rooms and mysterious corridors, and most importantly, it's crumbling one moment, magnificent the next.
That is such a chilling detail. It's not just magic, it's a physical manifestation of gaslighting. You literally can't trust the ground you stand on. You only believe it's magnificent because the crumbling reality is too terrifying to accept.
Precisely. And this entity, Lord Death, he steps right into the power vacuum of Salome's life. He makes the ultimate false promise. He says he'll make her his apprentice and teach her how to harness her mind and magic. He offers the solution to her lifelong problem.
But if the goal of the book is survival and self-sovereignty, why does she have to enter into this dangerous apprenticeship at all? Why couldn't she just start her journey on her own in the forest without him?
Because that is the painful, seductive trap. When you are that vulnerable, you don't look for the slow, painful path of healing yourself. You look for the massive external force that promises immediate control. Lord Death offers to turn her weakness into power, but only under his control, in his house of illusions. The tension is all in the central question the story asks. His words are as seductive as his presence, but should one trust Death? The reader knows he's the Bluebeard figure offering this magnificent prison. And the whole plot is about whether Salome will choose his easy, destructive mentorship or the painful, self-led path to freedom.
That brings us full circle to the core insight Lemon shared. This isn't just about escaping a villain, it's about internal ownership. If we synthesize everything, the genre pivot, the Bluebeard framework, the traumatic setup, the most critical theme is in the author's ultimate statement. This story is one of coming into being and into our own power, so that it is no longer a weapon in the hands of another.
And that statement just confirms why adult dark fantasy was the only choice for this story. The genre lets Lemon explore the difficulty of moving past illusion, the intense headiness in believing a dark god has come to save you.
Right.
That metaphor speaks directly to how compelling a toxic, controlling relationship can be when it promises structure to someone who feels fundamentally broken.
But that deal with the dark god requires self-betrayal.
Constantly is the constant choice to betray yourself in the illusion of that belief. The ultimate victory, then, isn't defeating death with brute force, but realizing the power was internal all along. That long-earned growth is what Lemon captures so beautifully when she describes emerging like a tendril from deep inside a dark forest until at last you break free.
It's slow, organic, and truly your own.
Exactly.
That journey from the convent to confronting Lord Death and his shifting manner, all founded in the real trauma of toxic romance, gives A Dark and Wild Wood just an incredible emotional weight. It's a fantasy rooted in a very difficult, very real human experience.
It absolutely is.
So, to synthesize this deep dive for you, Sarah Nicole Lemon's A Dark and Wild Wood is a major genre pivot, specifically chosen to handle the lifelong, non-linear process of coming into being.
Right. It uses the Bluebeard structure as a framework for processing a real-life toxic romance, and it's positioned explicitly as a celebration of survival and the difficult, earned achievement of personal power.
A celebration, not a cautionary tale.
And as you think about the themes woven through this narrative, consider the ultimate tension in Salome's journey. She needs to gain power over her dangerous abilities, but she seeks rescue from Lord Death. The key conflict is achieving that power independently versus taking the seductive shortcut offered by an external dangerous force.
So a final thought for you to consider.
For you, the listener, the provocative thought to consider is this, and it applies far beyond fiction. When you're in a moment of great professional or personal desperation, and you seek knowledge or power quickly, what is the locked room or illusion you have to be most wary of? What powerful shortcut promises to save you, but actually requires you to betray your own long-term interests or your self-sovereignty?
Food for thought indeed. That tension between seeking external rescue and requiring internal growth is universal. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sarah Nicole Lemon's powerful new work.
Thanks for listening.
We encourage you to explore this genre and these themes of power and survival further. We'll see you next time.